Hey people, it's Niall talking. So I was motivated to do this because someone pointed out that this is getting very little news coverage in the international news or anything. So here it is. Displaced by devastating floods. Oh, and this is from CNN. Displaced by devastating floods, Nigerians are forced to use floodwater despite cholera risk. Nigeria's southern Bayelsa state is officially nicknamed the glory of all lands, but much of it is now a river that has driven entire communities away from their homes. Desperate to survive, many locals fleeing raging floods which have wrecked their homes and livelihoods are also forced to depend upon floodwater for sustenance. For displaced inhabitants of northern Bayelsa's oldie town who have found new homes in roadside shacks and tent shelters with no access to running water, stagnant floodwaters are the only available alternatives for drinking, cooking, and bathing. As she rinses her uncooked fish in dirty floodwater next to her neighbor doing his laundry, local trader Chikozi Uzu, I'm guessing this is in Igbo land, shares her fears of catching a waterborne disease. I've heard of cholera, she told CNN, but I don't have a choice than to use this water. Meters away from Uzo, a young girl aged no more than 5 years old squats to urinate in the same floodwater she has rinsed her pots and plates in. Humanitarian agencies fear the floods will contribute to a health disaster, and Nigeria has already seen a rise in cholera infections as floods ravage many parts of the country. According to UNICEF, more than 2.5 million people in Nigeria are in need of humanitarian assistance, 60% of which are children and are at increased risk of waterborne diseases, drowning, and malnutrition due to the most severe flooding in the past decade. A rise in cholera infections could be devastating for the country as the World Health Organization warns of a strained global supply of cholera vaccines. Bayelsa and 30 other Nigerian states have reported thousands of suspected cholera cases. The country's Center for Disease Control and Prevention, NCDC, said in a recent report. Bayelsa is among 33 of 36 Nigerian states grappling with the devastation of the country's worst flooding in a decade. So basically, this flood has hit the entire country. More than 600 lives have been lost in floods across the West African country, its government says, and almost 1.5 million people have been displaced, according to the country's humanitarian ministry. Aniso Handy has remained in his house in Odi, which has been overrun by water. I still live here, he told CNN as he paddled his canoe into his flooded living room before making his way to a dry room upstairs. My family doesn't stay here because of the flood and their safety, but I know how to swim, he said. Damn, man. Seeing a man of that age just forced from his home, it's heartbreaking. For some in the community, such as 27-year-old Igobime Zibokere, this is not the first time they experienced the devastating effects of flooding. During the last major flooding in 2012, her sick mother drowned in her room when water engulfed their home, she told CNN. My mom was ill when the floods came in 2012. The water level was high and my sister and I couldn't carry her. All we could do was cry as she drowned in her room, Zibokere said. Zibokere, who is a petty trader, said she returned from the bush near her home in early October to find it taken over by water. The water level rose to her neck and they were forced to leave the house. Tragic. She and her young children are now homeless and living rough in a makeshift tent by the roadside. We are in a canopy. If it rains, the canopy will be blown away by the wind and we will be beaten by the rain. I'm suffering now. No food to eat or water to drink, the mother of 5 said. Oh my God. In Bayelsa's capital, Yenagoa, located 28 kilometers, 17 miles from Odi, floods have displaced not just the living but also the dead. In Yenagoa's Azikoro village, residents said the bodies have been floating in floodwaters around a local cemetery. Adjusting to life, wading through the stench of the stagnant water isn't the only worry for residents of Azikora, as the cost of living skyrockets in Bayelsa due to the floods. With major highways underwater, Bayelsa has been cut off from the rest of the country. Boats have become the only way to get around much of its environment. To get to Bayelsa, travelers pay around 2,000 naira, less than $5, to get in a packed tipper truck to cross flooded roads. Those unable to afford the fee can be seen wading through the water, carrying what little possessions they can. Nigeria's current flooding has been attributed to above-average rainfall and an overflowing dam in neighboring Cameroon. But the situation has also been exacerbated by poor drainage infrastructure, environmentalists have said. With a warmer climate causing more intense rainfall, authorities also blame climate change for the floods. In the meantime, the country aims to tackle one of the major causes of its flood problems by holding bilateral talks with Cameroon on the periodic opening of its dam, Nigeria Humanitarian Ministry said. We must initiate a bilateral discussion with authorities in Cameroon next month, November 2022, on the periodic opening of the Lagdo Dam, a statement by the ministry said last week. Well, the thing is, there's also other things such as government inaction. Now, I know that there was supposed to be another dam built in neighboring Adamawa State, but it was never done. Now, I don't know what the reason is, but this failure to accomplish the goal has cost the entire country. So things have to change. There has to be less corruption, there has to be more infrastructure, and there has to be more investment into the country. Anyway, complaints leveled at authorities. But since a week since the flooding began, Nigeria's government has yet to declare the flood a national emergency. Minister of Water Resources Suleiman Adamu told local media last week, it's certainly an emergency situation, but it all depends on what you mean by declaring a state of emergency. We have not reached a situation, in my view, where the relevant emergency management authorities have not been able to deal with the situation. Handy isn't pleased with the government's response. Nigerians are used to managing. If not, we would all have died. He said Nigerians care for themselves or more like infants that have no father or mother. Authorities in Bayelsa say they are racing to provide relief items for the thousands displaced. According to local government, around 20,000 people. And just to go back to what he said, it's not a cause for a state of emergency. People are dying. Like 90% of the country, if you say 33% states out of 36 is anything to go by. Most of the country is underwater or affected. What if this isn't an emergency? Please tell me what is. According to the local government, around 20,000 people now live in displacement camps where they are provided 2 meals a day along with medical services, potable water, and other emergency aids. For Zibokere, the government efforts are rarely felt in her community. When relief items are sent to the community by the government, individuals handling them distribute most of it to their relatives. The rest of us are left in hunger, she said. Bayelsa's government spokesman, Daniel Alabra, said the government was aware of these complaints. We hear some of these complaints, but we cannot verify them because while some claim not to have gotten the relief materials, others say they got it. Alabra told CNN, these reports help us to monitor the process to see that relief materials get to the persons they are intended for, he added. With the rain still coming and through November, more intense flooding is imminent, Nigerian government warns. Oh my God. So, I honestly don't know the solution, but hopefully if we keep talking about it, there might be some action taken, because there was all pray for Paris, pray for America and all that, when they've got all the resources to fix their problems. And this is another thing. Talking about all this corruption is something I've said when I've talked to many of these Nigerians. You know, if having a split of the ethnic groups in Nigeria won't change anything. If you have Hausa land, Yoruba land, and Igbo land, it will simply become the same corruption and the same problems split 3 ways. It'll just become Nigeria 2.0, 3.0. And I also want to say this. For a long time, I've seen this whole arguments online between, say, the FBA, ADOS, Nigerians, Haitians, Jamaicans, accusing each other of causing the problems. But do you notice that despite the thousands of miles splitting both Black Americans, Tiwanian Black Americans, ADOS, FBA, whatever you want to call them, and Nigerians suffer the same problems? Whether it's Chicago with its lead pipes, Flint with its lead pipes, Jackson, Mississippi with its broken water processing and just total abandonment by the federal and state government. Do you notice that the same problems afflict black people everywhere? Rather than fighting, black people worldwide must come together. There is no difference really between a black man in America or Nigeria. They all suffer the same difficulties to varying degrees, but it's the same. So let us hope there will become unity and the black people will unite and work together. So anyway, I'm going to leave this article in the description, and I'm going to leave some more if I can find them. Please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.